This is Dion Bickham coming to you from San Diego Comic-Con 2022. On behalf of CBR, I'm here with the creators of Bitterroot from Image Comic Books. We're going to chat a little bit about the book today. Gentlemen, first of all, let me ask you, what is the premise of your book, Bitterroot?
Long story short, it's a family of monster hunters set during the Harlem Renaissance, and they used their technology of steampunk technology and alchemy to deal with this infestation of monsters. The monsters derived from hate. So a nice family, graphic novel.
Yeah, like you said, our monsters are a little different. They're not vampires or werewolves. They're humans with a seed of hate in their heart. And as that seed grow and grow, they turn into a physical creature, right? So there's two fractions of the family. One believes they can be cured, and another believes their soul should be amputated in a sense. So there's somewhat a conflict between the family of how to deal with these creatures and this how racism manifests and create these monsters in the first place.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the dichotomy of, the philosophy of how you deal with racism. Some believe in, an eye for an eye. Some believe in a more democratic approach, the Malcolm Martin, theory.
Turn the other cheek.
Turn the other cheek versus, give them something to think about.
All right, and whose idea was it to set the series in 1920s Renaissance era?
Well, I think the germ of the idea started with me and Chuck. We started talking about just doing a story in that time period. It wasn't necessarily this specific story arc or the story, but it was about just that time period. And David Walker, the third creator, we were finishing up Power Man and Iron Fist over at Marvel, and we started thinking about how can we, come together and do something. Again, at Marvel, we had an idea not about what our story is here, but we had an idea about putting Luke Cage, back in Harlem, Renaissance time. I brought it up to David. I told him, Chuck has an idea. We talked about an idea of doing a story set during the Harlem Renaissance time period. And it just makes more sense. Why don't we just make it our own thing instead of giving this idea to Marvel? Why don't we, branch out here and try to make this thing happen? So we started to collaborate, and it started to develop from that standpoint.
Yeah, the 1920s is such a Harlem Renaissance is such a magical time, right? But also there's all extreme racism and hatred and pain and loss, right? So it's kind of like a balance between those incredible things they did during the Harlem Renaissance, that they influenced the world with their music and their art and their poetry and their writings and their novels. And that's kind of what the Sanford family kind of represents. They're basically trying to help people that are trying to destroy them, in a sense, right? They're using their natural born talents to basically try to save the world, make the world a better place, while they're being oppressed at the same time, And like Sanford said, we used to hang out every now and again, and we mentioned, we always talk about, what we're working on, what we're doing. And one day I said, monster hunters during the Harlem Renaissance, and his eyes lit up. Normally he kind of ignores me when I tell him what I'm working on, but that's kind of how it all started. And just it's a really powerful time, magical time, and I think it's a really good reflection of how people deal with struggle in our lives, how we can blossom out of nothingness, and overcome and still make magic and do incredible things, even though you're being oppressed and murdered, and yeah.
I was going to also share too. I think what really kind of like gave us even more of a jump start. We had those seeds of ideas, but then the things that took place in society around that time. Just be honest, the elections, 2016, and all the civil unrest that came after that. I think we were just feeling. I guess to some degree paralyzed by just the state of society. And we knew that part of, I guess, being creative, sometimes you feel like you feel powerless in just expressing your thoughts, feelings, opinions, everyone has that, from a social media standpoint, but what can we do? We felt like we had an opportunity to do something and make a statement that goes beyond anything that you would see, from a social media standpoint. And so those seeds of ideas, we just got even more motivated. We knew that we had something that was very, not only that said something, but I mean, we did some research. We didn't see anything quite like that, in this medium. So we knew that there was a grand opportunity to pursue this thing and do something pretty special.
Okay. Well, you're addressing a pretty heavy topic in the book. I mean, we're talking about, you're addressing issues of racism. You're addressing hatred between races and so forth. Why did you decide to include like the supernatural and the monsters and so forth in your story instead of just doing a straightforward story about racism?
Geeks.
Well, yeah, I think part of it honestly is I think David, he kind of uses this phrase, and it's a phrase that's used often about a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down smoother. We figured that the fantastical element of our story allowed every viewer audience to engage with the story. I think if you kind of, like you said, hit it head on, it could allow people to feel like, oh, well, this is not for me, or I don't think I can relate, or what have you. But no, we all can relate to this. It's a universal thing. Hate is universal. We all have faced it on one level or another. We just happen to be talking about the racism aspect of it, but we go deeper into that, because even in our own struggles as Black people, we can struggle within our own in terms of identity and what's the most significant or the most important in this family. I think going back to what we talked about earlier about the philosophy of how to deal with this infestation of monsters. Do we kill? Do we cure? It's very gray. It's not a black and white, solution or direction. So we felt like we had some interesting layers. This is like a 7-layer cake. That first layer is very straightforward, but you keep going, and the deeper you go, you see and you realize that, man, this thing goes a lot further than just the surface level that we think that's the end all, but you didn't realize that there's so much more, there in terms of that type of that struggle.
I mean, we, all three of us have so much we want to communicate through our writings and our art about, the state of the world and our past, and shining a light on our past so people can understand, how things evolved to where they are today, But at the same time, we also, all three of us grew up with Ghostbusters and, and Saturday morning cartoons and, vampires and Dracula and things like that.
That's an inside joke.
But it's like all that mixed in together. It came out as Bitterroot. We had something really powerful to say. We wanted to do something that empowered us, this powerful family, very educated, powerful family with a rich heritage, but also with all of our, our geek culture and what we love, and monster hunters and vampires and monsters. So that's kind of it all kind of mixed together, and here we are.
Are there any particular works that influenced you when you were writing this?
I think, like I mentioned, Ghostbusters was a big part of that as well. Definitely some of the works of Langston Hughes, some of his poetry and how it affected me. And when I started researching the Harlem Renaissance, at first I'm thinking, researching a lot of the music and the poets and the musicians, but then you start hearing about all the atrocities that go along with it as well, which kind of how the story gets a bit of a darker turn than what we were expecting, because you can't talk about the Harlem Renaissance if you talk about the lynchings and the Harlem prior to it, parallel to that as well. Yeah.
Yes, it's an interesting dichotomy between this rich, flourished culture, in our society, in this country, and down south, there's cities and towns being burned, to the ground. And just, I think part of that, and I know the question is about, what are some of the works that but honestly, it's just history for me. It was just looking back and reading about the history of this country, kind of an interesting story when the Watchmen TV show debuted in I think it was the first episode, and you started seeing the very dramatic scene with the town in Tulsa and the burnings of that. And so many people, social media just blew up with, oh my God, I didn't know that was an actual thing, and it was a weird juxtaposition of, we felt empowered, but we also felt almost, it was a little demoralizing that it took a TV show, fantastical, superhero, if you will, show for us to learn that. And people also there were some that started following our book, because that's where a lot of our story is grounded from. It's at least the first arc was about the tragedy that happened in Oklahoma, and how we used that moment in history to, galvanize the family at that point in time to where they have to go and bring about some form of justice, because there's a character, one of the, I guess he's the anti-hero or at that from that first arc, that tragedy is what made him who he is or was. And so people started to the word got out even more about, wow, there's a book called Bitterroot that's touching base on the same thing. Like, wow, how could two totally different genres have this thing already featured in the stories? And so again, it just felt empowering to do that. But again, it was a little hard to take, knowing that people are just finding out about this.
Okay. Well, Regina King has expressed interest in bringing your story to feature film.
Who again?
I'm sorry, Regina Hall. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, Regina King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You see,
Yeah.
now you're just messing with me.
I was like, who's that? Who are you talking about?
Now you're just messing with me. Okay. Well, someone is bringing this story to the big screen. Sure. How do you feel about your story being made into a movie?
It feels a little unreal, honestly. I hope it has the same effect. It will have the same effect as the book, because like Clifford mentioned, people will come to us and say, "Hey, we had no idea, that about the Tulsa race massacre. No one knew about it." And for us, we grew up just knowing that it took place. Like I said, it feels really unreal, surreal, and honored that Regina King and Ryan Coogler are going to take this project on, and we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, what he said. I mean, it's just a huge honor, to have so many substantial players. Ryan Coogler, Regina King, legendary is, the proximity and those guys. It's a huge honor.
Okay. All right. We have time for one more question. I know that you guys kind of took a little bit of break from the series in 2021, but you are now coming back. What can fans expect from the new issues of Bitterroot?
Well, I think we're going to put together the hardcover collected edition, which brings volumes 1 through 3 together, and we have a special short story that's going to link what has been done and what's to come in that hardcover. So look for that. I think the end of the year, somewhere in November, somewhere around that time. We're gearing up for that. And like I said, moving forward, we got the story taking place in the 1960s. So, and I think we kind of did a little sneak peek at Heroes Con in Charlotte to some fans as a special thank you, because we've been on hiatus for almost 3 years, and it's the first time we all three of us has been together since 2019, I think. So, so that was the first time we've been together. So we wanted to kind of give a little, something, special to them. So we announced it there, and the reception was amazing. People were like, "Oh my God, that makes a lot of sense." So if you're a fan of, Jack Kirby and Challengers of the Unknown and, Steranko's Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. during that time period with black folks, that's kind of the direction we're going with that one. So
you will still see some of the same characters, from the original book, but it'll be aged a little bit more, and also some descendants and a few other cool Easter eggs for you. So
it's all still the family. It's all the family, but it's the next generation. Right. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much for your time. I'm Dion Bickham, reporting to you from San Diego Comic-Con 2022 for CBR. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. I hope you have an excellent time at the con.